What's up, interpreters? This is Aaisha. I am the Vice President for Programs for the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, also known as ASALH.
What's up, interpreters? My name is Ariel Roy. I am the partner historian for the Association of African American Life and History, also known as ASALH.
What's up, interpreters? This is Parker McMullen Bushman. I am the president for the National Association for Interpretation, and so excited for this interview.
What's up, interpreters? I am Paul Caputo, NAI's executive director. So excited to be speaking with Aaisha and Ariel, and along with my co-host, NAI President Parker McMullen Bushman. Parker and I had the genuine privilege and honor to attend the ASALH conference in September in Jacksonville, Florida. It was an incredibly powerful event, and I personally learned a ton and got to meet so many amazing people. The first question I have is for about ASALH in general. Like, what is ASALH, and who are your members, and what's the purpose of the organization?
So ASALH was established in 1915 by Dr. Carter G. Woodson in Chicago, Illinois. And he created an organization because there was a need to have the preservation and study of Black people's experiences. During 1915, you have The Birth of a Nation, the film that was released that was very inaccurate about the history of Black people. He himself was told that Black people doesn't have a history, and he saw that that was definitely incorrect, and he wanted to create a space and a place where this history was studied, appreciated, and then promoted across the country. He created two publications that we still publish today, including the Journal of African History, what's known as JA, and the Black History Bulletin, also known as the BHB. BHB was geared towards educators and teachers, and that was a way to promote Black history in schools and to provide tools for teachers who are wanting to teach Black history in their curriculum. He is also known as the father of Black History Month because he established Negro History Week in 1926 and went on to create National Black History Month in the 1970s. The Omegas, which was his fraternity, helped to really promote Black History Week and month across the country, and it is now celebrated in America as well as in the UK. But the UK celebrates theirs in October, and we celebrate ours in February. There's often a misconception about why February was chosen. Colloquially, people think it's because it's the shortest month. That is inaccurate, and it was because it was chosen in February because to honor the two presidents we have in February. We have Lincoln and Douglas.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that background information about ASALH and the work that you do. I have a question for you, and I'm wondering, what are some of the challenges that you and your members face in telling the stories of African American life and history? Like, we're seeing all sorts of things across, the U.S. where people are even creating laws and kind of changing how we teach Black history and what stories are being told. And I'm wondering, how this is playing out for all of you, and if there are those challenges or others that you all are dealing with.
Yeah, so I'll start off with this one. Some of the challenges we face, as you mentioned, Parker, like the changing political climate that we're in right now. And some people have gone as far as to say African American history is racist, and they're blatantly segregating the history, not knowing that African American history is American history. It's the holistic full telling of the country's upbringing and the country's culture, the country's social life, social history. So we constantly are dealing with our members and our partners in ASALH, like, well, like, what do we do? Like, how do we fight this? And that's one of the biggest challenges that we face. As you know, that we were in Jacksonville, Florida, which is kind of like the battleground and one of the principal states that's kind of leading this sort of these sort of challenges, and it just makes it much harder because we're already dealing with challenges internally because we here at ASALH want to teach our youth their African American history, and it's imperative for us to get that into schools as well. Also to do outreach with the communities and just for the community to have these laws on top of what we're already facing in our community. That just kind of makes it hard, but I would say it's a good fight and it's a worthy challenge.
Thank you, Ariel. I definitely concur with what what you suggested, and just want to include that some of the challenges are funding in terms of access to information for research and travel around Black history. I'm an archivist by training and by trade, and so one of the challenges that are around the access of records and preservation of records for around Black history folk, including different groups of sexualities or different class differences. And so it makes telling the fuller story of Black people's lived experiences difficult. And then there's also the challenge of history being seen as boring and not as, fiscally responsible for someone to go in a career that is focused on the humanities. And so I think societally we have a challenge around the cultural heritage being seen as a viable career. And that is something that ASALH and I know NAI has been working to advocate for these careers in this field. So we definitely need more people to get into the field that we can have the research, have the study, have the materials in this arena.
It's interesting when I hear about the work that you're doing organizationally because there's so much overlap. And Parker and I obviously discovered this when we were there at the conference. Parker and Sean Halifax presented a pre-conference workshop on interpretation, essentially, and the role it can play in teaching about African American life and history. Why did you all feel, from ASALH's perspective, that it was important to bring in Parker and Sean and to have this session on interpretation? What's the overlap between what you're doing and what NAI is doing with interpretation?
When the Acorn, as Ariel mentioned, Acorn partnered with the AAAM, which is African American Museums Association. They partnered on a grant to provide Acorn sites with funding, and so ASALH is an Acorn member. And so when this opportunity was floated to us, I knew immediately that NAI was a partner that I wanted to reach out to because interpretation is part about the lived experiences, telling stories and exploring this history. ASALH is not just about the academy, but is about the public as well. And so how to translate, the ivory tower, one would say, into the public information and be able to encourage people about why historic sites, why buildings, why these stories are important, and give people the tools to do that, right? So I thought having the NAI workshop at the conference would give people access to these skills that wouldn't necessarily be possible get access to have like career options as well. I mentioned earlier about having encourage the different variety of career options for individuals that are in cultural heritage to not just be a professor, but there's opportunities to be an educator, be a public historian, to be an interpreter at these sites. We also wanted to involve the Acorn folk because some people are at these sites but don't have the training. They've just been pushed into or even advocate for themselves to be in these positions, but don't have the tools to do it. And so that's why the Acorn partners was important to bring into this workshop as well.
Yes, and I 100% agree with Aisha. Like she mentioned, the session was geared towards ACORN. For those who don't know, well, why we say ACORN, it stands for the African American Civil Rights Network. It is an MPS program that talks about African American civil rights stories and histories, and we wanted to inform the public and the ACORN community about the work that NIA is doing, and Parker and Sean did a wonderful job. You know, it was a two-part session, and I credit them for holding down the fort. You know, and it was geared towards, you know, Parker discussed like the diverse methods of interpretation. She discussed her own work in interpretation and how she uses what she's fluent in, and to say I'm using this in my own space and I'm claiming my own space. And Sean, he talked about his ethics of interpretation towards the end, and it was just a wonderful session. And I can say from the participants that were there, they truly enjoyed it. And again, we're so glad that NIA was able to partner with us on this.
Yeah, it was really wonderful to be there and to be able to do that session and to hear from different people who were doing, you know, the work on the ground and out and meeting with the public. I loved all of the different connections that we were able to make in Jacksonville and the people that I was able to meet. And so many people are doing interpretation. Like I talked to even people outside of the African American Civil Rights Network. I talked to other people who were doing interpretation in different spaces and talking about the power of having that framework and that ability to say, you know, oh, I've got this background that helps me understand how to structure the way that I am talking to people about these topics. So it was such a cool collaboration, and I loved being, you know, in that space in Jacksonville. It's not very often that I can attend a conference where I am not in the minority, right? Where Paul was, but I was not in that space. And there was something really powerful about that. But, you know, I did like being there. It was great. But beforehand, you know, I had my worries about traveling to Florida, especially with a lot of the legislation that was being handed down. And then we're going for this Black History conference in a state that's like banning the teaching of Black history. And so I wasn't sure how I would feel, but I really was inspired by the way you all framed this as like going to the fight, and like we can't leave behind and not think about the people who are living in these places, right? There are people who don't have the opportunity to leave, don't have the opportunity to move, and are having to deal with this oppression. And then to say that we're not going to offer these opportunities to be in community or whatever because of the government that you don't necessarily agree with is you know, making these things is, I think, is huge, and we need to show that support. And so I would ask you all, like the conference in Jacksonville was powerful. It blew my mind. What lessons did you all take away from holding your event in a place that was so politically charged?
Thank you, Parker and Paul. I think I so glad you guys took away from the conference what you did. That's the point, right? So we knew we couldn't do a standard academic conference because that wouldn't get people excited about coming to ASALH, coming to Jacksonville. And so we knew we had to do things differently. I credit, as a part of the past 3 years, we've received funding from the from Howard University, which got funding from the Andrew Mellon Foundation to do social justice work. And we've been doing that for the past 3 years. So the leaders of that grant project, Michelle Pouchot and Lisa Brock, brought to us the idea of doing a banned book readout for the conference. And then they made the connections themselves. They did the outreach. They did the planning, all the logistics together, and they put a proposal together for us to provide to the ASALH Executive Council. And it was come convincing. We had to convince some people that this was an important aspect of the conference, of coming to Jacksonville, that it wasn't just enough to have sessions and papers being read, but we need to be active and be out there visibly and put our bodies, out there as well, and take up space in Jacksonville, so that people would recognize that we were here, that we were advocating Black history, that we were not going to go away. And that was very important to to the broader EC, really, and then really to the Jacksonville people. So part of ASALH, we have branches all over the country, and we have a really strong membership in Florida and a really strong branch in Jacksonville. And so the Jacksonville leadership of ASALH really advocated for this as well. And they really advocated for us to come to Jacksonville. They wanted us there. And they, as you mentioned, Parker, said we can't leave people behind. And so all of those elements led us to come Jacksonville and to be steadfast in that effort. In terms of lessons, we learned really that community buy-in is vital, and you can't be successful with community outreach without local community buy-in, right? We come to any city in the USA and put in a conference and just be, boilerplate. But to have a successful conference, to be pivotal and to have an impact, we need to have community buy-in and to build allies for the conference. Having a message was very important to us. Messaging around we go into the fight was important, to advocate to members about why they should come to Florida. Even if they couldn't physically come, we can fund by donation or attend virtually. Another part that we put out to our membership. And it was really brought the association together. It was really, really heartwarming to see how the membership, and even those who are not members, are able to come and be in community with each other in Florida. That we did, as you mentioned, had some people that were questioning why we were coming to Florida. But Sylvia Cyrus, who is our ASALH ED, and our Master President Marvin Delaney always quote around the freedom fighters, the bus riders, right? They went to the South. They came to where people were to support people and to give them the information that they needed to make change. And that is what we were doing. We were not going to shy away from this, because this really is a attack on ASALH mission, right? It's basically saying ASALH shouldn't even exist. What we're doing isn't important. And so it was very vital for us to come, and it re-energized us for who we are and what we stand for. And it goes into some of our goals going on in the next few years around creating freedom schools, and so helping to support other entities who are interested in teaching Black history, who are not supported otherwise.
I'm going to go a little off script here. This is not one of the questions that I sent you earlier, but when I spoke at the NAI conference about this experience that I had personally, and Parker mentioned, right, like this was a new experience for me to be in the minority at a conference like this. It's just not very frequent that I'm the only one in the room who looks like me. And so it was instructive, and it was appropriately uncomfortable for me, right? Like I think it was a really valuable experience. And one of the occasions where I finally mustered the gumption to raise my hand and ask a question at the end of a session was a session called A State of Censorship, University of Florida African American Studies. And it was 3 professors from the University of Florida who were talking about the restrictions on what they can and cannot teach, what they can and cannot say, what they can and cannot put on social media. And as you know, as I'm sure we've mentioned to you, our conference is going to be in Jacksonville in 2024. And so this question of what lessons did you learn by being in Jacksonville for your conference is important for us, because, we are having these conversations as well now. And at that session with these 3 University of Florida professors, I asked the question. I said, what's the value in an association like NAI's? What's the value in an association like NAI being in a place that stirs this controversy? And their response was super powerful, right? They said that you all, an organization, interpreters, can tell the stories, can be the messengers that we cannot be. You know, if our voices are being suppressed, you all can come here and tell those stories. And I thought that that was just incredibly powerful. And so I don't actually have a question here, but I just wanted to say that that really landed with me, and in such an incredible way, being at your event and seeing that message coming directly from people who are on the ground fighting the fight right now. So thank you for that. Is really that's like I said, I don't actually have a question there, but that was just an incredibly powerful experience for me. I guess I do have a question. What would your message to members of NAI who are questioning, you know, should we go to a place like this? You know, ASALH obviously had a very specific fight to fight about, you know, the telling of African American stories and the teaching of African American history. NAI is a broader field, right? And people are in all areas of interpretation. What message would you have for people in NAI who are considering, do I go to a place like Jacksonville?
Thank you. And that's a great question. I would say go to support the community. As Aaisha alluded to, you cannot be in a place where you're hosting in the city without the community's input. So go. And like, you know, like myself, I was a little bit apprehensive as well, you know, but I had to go. Not because it was required for me because of my job, but I had to go. So the community comes first, I'll say, for organizations like NAI and ASALH. Always put the community first, and that would be my first and last and only piece of advice to your members.
Yes, I would. Yes, I go. Yes. I would also encourage people who are hesitant about coming to Florida is thinking about what is the purpose of interpretation? What is the purpose and overall goal of your profession? And it's about interpreting history and helping people understand perspectives, understand stories, understand people. And you can't do that unless you're in the place, right? And without going to the place and talking to the people about their experiences yourself, you're always going to hear it secondhand, third hand. And so, so being in this space in Florida, you're able to see what people actually are talking about. What's the feeling of the community, feeling of the of the culture, and then you are able to say, yes, this space needs us, and I can help provide my assistance in a way that I can, my expertise.
All right. I love that. We're going to wrap up soon, but I really want to ask you all, what are your goals for ASALH in the future? What are you hoping for your organization, for the work that you do?
Yeah, so my primarily work with ASALH is through the African American Civil Rights Network, and ASALH is sort of new to ACORN. They've been accepted since 2022, and I think Aaisha can confirm that. And we just growing civil rights history, civil rights interpretation, teaching that, and using ASALH as that voice, as that platform. You know, involving the youth, as I mentioned earlier before, like getting the youth involved, like the high school students, middle school students, elementary students, even college students, because sometimes they don't get the full history of African American civil rights history, which is a very important part in our history, in our storytelling. And also, again, as Aaisha alluded to, seeing historians, preservationists, interpreters, archivists, anyone within the public liberal arts career field to see that you can have a career in this, and it can be a lifelong worthwhile career.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that one of the goals of ASALH is to grow membership. And so if anything that we've said today resonates with you, we do encourage you to join ASALH. That website is in the link, I'm sure, below. But beyond that, for programming wise, we have Freedom Schools planning that I mentioned earlier to provide case studies and toolkits to support individuals and organizations that are aiming to do this work themselves. We're also going to be expanding and building on a social justice work that we've been going on the past 3 years. People don't often think of history as social justice work, but it's very, and we talk about today, it really is social justice work, right? It's not just about being on the street all the time, but it's about preservation of history, promoting awareness of records, of information. The conferences that we put on are about social justice work and providing tools and materials for that effort, including doing workshops around professional development and subject areas, creating interest groups for these areas, including interpretation interest group. We started a food agriculture interest group. So we're trying to provide spaces for our members to engage with us beyond the conference. So that is one of the major goals. And then as we lead up to 2026, we're going to be having, which is the anniversary of the country, 250th anniversary of the country, to have State of Black America kind of town hall series. It's important to not just center everything on 2026, but to really have a discussion leading up to that around education, about health disparities, about climate change, everything that can think about the state of Black America. So the future bright for ASALH. We are having our luncheon coming back in February in DC. So tickets are available now. And then we have in Pittsburgh, will be our conference in 2024. So look forward to seeing you there.
Awesome. That is amazing. Thank you both so much for coming on and chatting. I'm so glad for this new relationship between our organizations. I'm so glad on a personal level that I got to experience the incredible event in Jacksonville. And I'm so looking forward to more. I'm glad to know you'll be in Pittsburgh. It's in my home state of Pennsylvania. I grew up on the other side of the state in Philadelphia, but I'm just, yeah, it's, and Aaisha, I really particularly enjoy the notion of history as social justice, because I think that's such an important part of what interpreters are doing, is fighting to make sure that the untold stories are told. And, you know, history is not this static thing that is just written once from one perspective and that's it forever. And so I think that's such an important part of this conversation and the work that you're doing. So thank you both. This has been such a valuable conversation for me.
And I would like to just echo everything that Paul said. It's been such a pleasure to speak with you both and to hear about the work that you're doing. And thank you so much for sharing with us. And I'm so excited for this continued partnership.
And interpreters,
that's what's up.
I think that was pretty good. I think we did it.
And interpreters, that's what's up. And interpreters, that's what's up.